Imagine reaching the end of your life and realizing you spent more time trying to be loved by others than actually loving yourself. You spent years chasing validation, explaining yourself, tolerating disrespect, and emotionally exhausting yourself just to keep people in your life who never truly valued your peace. Meanwhile, your own mind became more anxious, more empty, and more disconnected every single year. Buddhism teaches that the moment you stop abandoning yourself emotionally, your entire life begins changing from the inside out. Because true peace does not come from being accepted by everyone. It comes from finally respecting your own soul. In this video, you will learn 7 deep Buddhist self-care lessons that will help you stop emotionally destroying yourself and finally build the peaceful, confident, and emotionally healthy life you truly deserve. 1. Stop speaking negatively to yourself. One of the biggest reasons people suffer emotionally is because of the way they speak to themselves inside their own mind. Many people constantly criticize themselves for every mistake, compare themselves to others, and feel like they are never good enough. Buddhism teaches that your mind becomes deeply affected by the thoughts you repeat every single day. If your mind constantly hears negativity, fear, and self-hatred, your inner peace slowly begins to disappear. Many people wake up every day already feeling emotionally heavy because their own thoughts keep attacking them. They replay old mistakes, blame themselves for everything, and focus only on their flaws instead of their growth. Even small failures make them feel worthless. Over time, this negative inner voice becomes so normal that they do not even realize how much emotional damage it is causing. The sad truth is that many people show kindness, patience, and understanding to everyone else, but never give the same compassion to themselves. They forgive other people easily, but punish themselves endlessly. Buddhism teaches that suffering grows when the mind becomes filled with constant judgment and negativity. Self-love begins when you learn to treat yourself with patience and compassion. Instead of attacking yourself for every failure, learn from your mistakes peacefully. Growth happens through understanding, not self-hatred. Nobody becomes mentally strong by constantly destroying themselves inside their own mind. The more kindness and understanding you give yourself, the calmer, healthier, and more peaceful your inner world becomes. 2. Stop staying where your soul feels unhappy. Many people abandon themselves by staying in environments that slowly destroy their peace. They remain around toxic people, unhealthy relationships, constant negativity, and emotional stress because they are afraid of being alone or disappointing others. Buddhism teaches that attachment is one of the biggest causes of suffering. Sometimes people continue holding on to situations that are clearly hurting them simply because they fear change. Deep inside, your mind and body already know when something no longer feels healthy for your soul. Certain people drain your energy every time you are around them. Some relationships leave you emotionally exhausted instead of peaceful. Some environments constantly create stress, anxiety, and sadness inside your mind. But many people ignore these feelings and continue sacrificing their peace just to keep others comfortable. The problem is that every time you ignore your own emotional pain, you slowly teach yourself that your happiness does not matter. Over time, this creates deep emotional exhaustion. You may smile around others while silently feeling broken inside. Buddhism teaches that inner peace cannot grow in places filled with constant emotional suffering. Self-love sometimes means having the courage to walk away from what continuously hurts your spirit. Protecting your peace is not selfish. It is self-respect. Not every person deserves permanent access to your energy, your time, and your emotional stability. The moment you stop forcing yourself to stay where your soul feels heavy, your healing finally begins. 3. Stop depending on other people for your worth. One of the biggest reasons many people struggle to truly love themselves is because their self-worth depends completely on how other people treat them. If someone praises them, gives them attention, or makes them feel needed, they feel valuable and happy. But the moment they are ignored, rejected, criticized, or misunderstood, their confidence completely falls apart. Buddhism teaches that attachment to external validation creates deep emotional suffering because your happiness becomes controlled by other people's opinions. Many people spend their entire lives trying to be accepted by everyone around them. They constantly seek approval, attention, and reassurance because deep inside they fear feeling unimportant or unloved. They change their personality to fit in. They hide their real emotions to avoid rejection. They say yes when they want to say no. They tolerate disrespect because they are afraid people will leave them. Slowly, they begin losing connection with their true self because their entire identity becomes based on keeping other people happy. The painful truth is that no matter how kind, loving, or genuine you are, not everyone will understand you. Some people will judge you without knowing your story. Some people will criticize your growth because it makes them uncomfortable. Some people will fail to appreciate your value, no matter how much effort you give them. If your peace depends on receiving constant validation from others, your emotions will always feel unstable. Buddhism teaches that true peace begins when you stop searching for your worth in the outside world. Your value does not increase when someone praises you, and it does not disappear when someone rejects you. You were already valuable before anyone approved of you. The problem is that many people forget this and begin emotionally depending on other people to feel worthy. This emotional dependence creates endless suffering. One negative comment can ruin your entire day. One rejection can make you question your entire identity. One person leaving your life can make you feel completely broken. When your self-worth depends on others, you give people too much power over your emotional state. Your happiness becomes fragile because it is controlled by things outside your control. Self-love begins when you finally stop handing your emotional power to everyone else. It begins when you realize that your worth is not based on attention, popularity, relationships, or approval. Real confidence comes from learning how to respect yourself even when others fail to understand you. It comes from accepting yourself without constantly needing reassurance from the world. Buddhism teaches that attachment creates suffering, and attachment to validation is one of the most emotionally exhausting attachments a person can have. The more you chase approval, the more empty you eventually feel, because external validation never fully satisfies the soul. No amount of praise can heal someone who secretly does not value themselves internally. The moment you begin appreciating your own worth, your entire life slowly changes. You stop begging people to choose you because you already choose yourself. You stop over-explaining yourself to everyone because you no longer need constant approval. You stop chasing attention because your peace no longer depends on being validated by others. The more deeply you respect yourself internally, the less emotionally controlled you become by other people's opinions. And that is where true emotional freedom finally begins. 4. Rest without feeling guilty. Many people today feel guilty whenever they stop working, helping others, or staying busy. They believe they must constantly be productive to feel valuable. If they take time to rest, slow down, or step away from responsibilities for a moment, they immediately begin feeling lazy, unimportant, or weak. Buddhism teaches that a peaceful life requires balance, but modern life has convinced many people that exhaustion is normal and constant busyness is success. The truth is that many people are mentally and emotionally tired, not because life is impossible, but because they never allow themselves to truly rest. Their mind is always carrying stress, pressure, overthinking, and emotional responsibility. Even when their body is sitting still, their mind continues running endlessly. They constantly worry about the future, replay problems in their head, or feel pressure to keep proving themselves to everyone around them. Over time, this creates emotional burnout. You may begin feeling numb, irritated, anxious, or disconnected from life without fully understanding why. Simple things start feeling overwhelming. Your patience disappears faster. Your mind feels heavy all the time. But instead of listening to their emotional exhaustion, many people continue forcing themselves to push harder because they believe rest means failure. Buddhism teaches that the mind needs silence, stillness, and recovery, just like the body needs sleep. A person cannot live peacefully while constantly draining their emotional energy every single day. Rest is not laziness. Rest is part of healing. It allows your mind to breathe again after carrying stress for too long. Many people abandon themselves emotionally by ignoring their own exhaustion. They continue giving energy to work, people, problems, and responsibilities while completely neglecting their own mental health. They become available to everyone else while secretly feeling emotionally empty inside. The sad part is that many people only realize how exhausted they truly are after reaching complete burnout. Self-love means learning how to listen to your own mind before it completely breaks down. Sometimes you do not need to push harder. Sometimes you simply need peace, quiet, and recovery. You need time away from noise, pressure, and emotional chaos. You need moments where your mind is not constantly fighting stress. Buddhism teaches mindfulness, because peace can only grow in a calm and balanced mind. When you are constantly overwhelmed, your thoughts become heavier and your emotions become unstable. But when you allow yourself proper rest, your mind slowly becomes clearer. Your emotions calm down. You begin thinking with more patience instead of reacting from exhaustion. Rest also means giving yourself permission to stop carrying the world on your shoulders all the time. Many people feel responsible for everyone's happiness while ignoring their own emotional needs. They feel guilty for setting boundaries or taking time for themselves. But constantly sacrificing your own peace eventually destroys your ability to care for yourself properly. A peaceful life is not built through constant pressure and emotional exhaustion. It is built through balance. There is nothing selfish about protecting your mental health. There is nothing wrong with slowing down when your soul feels tired. The more you learn to rest without guilt, the healthier your relationship becomes with yourself. You stop treating yourself like a machine that must always perform perfectly. You begin treating yourself like a human being who deserves care, recovery, and compassion too. And sometimes, the most powerful form of self-care is simply allowing yourself to pause and breathe. 6. Forgive yourself for your past. Many people secretly carry pain from their past for years, without realizing how deeply it is affecting their present life. They continue replaying old mistakes, failures, regrets, heartbreaks, embarrassing moments, and painful memories inside their mind every single day. Even when life begins moving forward, their mind remains emotionally trapped somewhere in the past. Buddhism teaches that attachment is one of the greatest causes of suffering, and one of the most painful attachments a person can carry is attachment to their old identity, their regrets, and their past pain. Many people struggle to love themselves because deep inside they still blame themselves for things they wish they had done differently. They constantly think about opportunities they missed, relationships they ruined, decisions they regret, or moments where they failed. Some people feel ashamed of who they used to be. Others carry guilt for hurting people, making wrong choices, or not becoming the person they thought they would become. Over time, these regrets slowly become emotional chains that keep the mind trapped in suffering. The painful truth is that many people never fully move on from their past because they never truly forgive themselves. Their body may continue living in the present, but mentally they are still stuck reliving painful moments over and over again. They punish themselves daily for things that already happened years ago. They keep reopening old wounds inside their own mind until emotional suffering becomes normal to them. Buddhism teaches that life is always changing. Nothing remains the same forever. People grow, people learn, people evolve through pain, mistakes, hardship, and experience. But many people refuse to allow themselves to grow because they continue defining themselves only by their worst moments. They believe their mistakes permanently define who they are. This creates deep emotional exhaustion. Imagine carrying guilt, shame, and regret every single day for years. Eventually, your mind becomes heavy. Your confidence disappears. Your peace fades away. You stop seeing yourself as someone worthy of happiness because your past constantly reminds you of your failures. This is why self-forgiveness is one of the deepest forms of emotional healing. Many people think forgiving themselves means pretending their mistakes never happened. But Buddhism teaches something different. Forgiveness is not denial. Forgiveness means accepting that you are human. It means understanding that every person makes mistakes while trying to navigate life. No human being goes through life without pain, confusion, failure, or regret. Sometimes people make bad decisions because they were emotionally lost, immature, afraid, hurt, or unaware at that time in their life. You are not the same person you were years ago. The version of you who made those mistakes existed with a different level of understanding, wisdom, and emotional awareness. But many people continue hating themselves for things they did before they truly understood life. They refuse to acknowledge their growth because they remain emotionally attached to guilt. Buddhism teaches mindfulness, because healing begins when you become aware of how much suffering your mind is creating unnecessarily. The past already happened. You cannot change it no matter how many times you replay it inside your head. Constantly punishing yourself does not undo what happened. It only destroys your present peace. Some people spend their whole life emotionally trapped by one painful chapter of their story. Maybe someone betrayed them, and they blame themselves for trusting too much. Maybe they failed at something important, and now feel permanently broken. Maybe they hurt someone they loved, and cannot stop feeling ashamed. Maybe they wasted years of their life, and now feel behind everyone else. The mind keeps repeating these painful memories until a person slowly loses compassion for themselves completely. But Buddhism teaches that suffering grows when the mind refuses to let go. The more tightly you hold on to guilt, shame, and regret, the heavier your spirit becomes. Many people believe they deserve to suffer forever because of their past mistakes. They feel guilty whenever happiness enters their life, because deep inside they still think they are unworthy of peace. This is why self-love becomes impossible without self-forgiveness. You cannot build a peaceful relationship with yourself while secretly hating who you used to be. Healing begins the moment you stop seeing yourself only through the lens of your failures. Your mistakes are part of your story, but they are not your entire identity. Sometimes the painful experiences you regret the most are the very experiences that created your wisdom. Many people become more compassionate because they once suffered deeply. Many people become emotionally mature because they once made painful mistakes. Many people become spiritually awakened because life humbled them through failure and heartbreak. Pain often teaches lessons success never could. Buddhism teaches that every moment is temporary. Emotions change, seasons change, life changes. The person you are today is not the same person you were yesterday. Yet many people continue carrying old shame as if they are trapped in the past forever. They refuse to allow themselves a new beginning because they believe they do not deserve one. But every human being deserves the opportunity to heal, grow, and become better. Forgiving yourself does not mean avoiding responsibility for your actions. It means accepting responsibility without destroying yourself emotionally forever. There is a difference between learning from your past and living inside it permanently. Wisdom grows when you reflect peacefully on your mistakes and use them to become more aware, compassionate, and emotionally mature. The problem is that many people turn regret into self-destruction. Instead of learning, they keep emotionally torturing themselves. They replay conversations, imagine different outcomes, and wonder what life could have been if they made different choices. But this endless mental replay only steals peace from the present moment. Buddhism reminds us that attachment to the past creates suffering because the mind becomes trapped in things it can no longer change. The more you resist accepting your past, the more emotional pain you create for yourself. Acceptance does not mean you approve of everything that happened. It simply means you stop mentally fighting reality every single day. Self-forgiveness also means understanding that your worth as a human being is not destroyed by your mistakes. Many people carry deep shame because they believe failure makes them unlovable or weak. But failure is part of being human. Every person you admire has made mistakes. Every wise person has experienced pain, confusion, regret, and failure at some point in their journey. The difference is that emotionally healthy people eventually learn how to forgive themselves and continue growing. Holding on to guilt forever does not make you a better person. It only keeps you emotionally trapped. Some people punish themselves for so long that suffering becomes part of their identity. They become addicted to guilt because they no longer know how to live peacefully with themselves. But peace becomes possible the moment you finally allow yourself to heal. The moment you stop defining yourself by your worst mistakes, your mind slowly becomes lighter. The moment you stop replaying old pain every day, your emotional energy begins returning. The moment you forgive yourself, your heart finally starts breathing again after years of emotional heaviness. Buddhism teaches that healing begins with awareness, compassion, and letting go. You cannot move peacefully into the future while dragging the entire weight of your past behind you forever. At some point, you must stop punishing yourself for being human. Your past may have shaped you, but it does not have to imprison you. You are allowed to grow beyond your old mistakes. You are allowed to heal from your old pain. You are allowed to become someone new. And sometimes, one of the greatest forms of self-love is finally looking at your past with compassion instead of hatred. 7. Spend time connecting with yourself. One of the biggest reasons many people feel emotionally lost today is because they are completely disconnected from themselves. Their life is constantly filled with noise, distraction, pressure, entertainment, social media, responsibilities, and endless stimulation. From the moment they wake up until the moment they sleep, their attention is always focused outward. They are always consuming something, reacting to something, chasing something, or worrying about something. But very few people spend real time understanding their own mind, emotions, and inner world. Buddhism teaches that true peace is not found outside yourself. It is discovered within. But most people are so distracted by the outside world that they never slow down enough to hear their own soul anymore. Many people are surrounded by people all day, yet still feel deeply empty inside. They constantly seek distraction because silence feels uncomfortable to them. The moment they are alone, they immediately grab their phone, turn on entertainment, scroll endlessly, or search for something to escape their thoughts. This happens because many people have lost connection with themselves completely. They no longer know how to simply sit peacefully with their own mind. The problem is that when you never spend time alone with yourself, you slowly lose awareness of who you truly are. You stop understanding your emotions. You stop recognizing what genuinely brings you peace. You stop listening to your intuition. Instead of living consciously, you begin living automatically. Your life becomes controlled by habits, distractions, pressure, and emotional reactions. Many people spend years running away from themselves without realizing it. Some people fear solitude because they are afraid of facing their own emotions. When life becomes quiet, unresolved pain begins surfacing. Regrets appear. Anxiety appears. Loneliness appears. So instead of healing internally, people distract themselves constantly to avoid facing what is happening inside their own heart. But Buddhism teaches that avoiding yourself only creates deeper suffering over time. Healing begins the moment you stop running from your inner world. Many people know everything about other people, but almost nothing about themselves. They understand other people's emotions, problems, opinions, and desires, but they have never truly explored their own mind deeply. They spend years trying to fit into the expectations of society while completely abandoning their authentic self. Slowly, they forget who they truly are beneath all the pressure and noise. This is why so many people secretly feel emotionally exhausted. Their soul feels disconnected because they are living without inner awareness. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because awareness is the beginning of peace. The more connected you become with yourself, the more emotionally stable your life becomes. You stop reacting blindly to every emotion because you begin understanding your mind more clearly. You start recognizing your emotional patterns, your fears, your attachments, and your habits. This self-awareness changes your entire relationship with life. But self-awareness can only grow when you create quiet moments for reflection and stillness. Many people think being alone automatically means loneliness. But Buddhism teaches something very different. Solitude can become one of the most healing experiences in life when used correctly. Solitude gives your mind space to breathe without constant outside influence. It allows you to reconnect with yourself without distraction. It gives you time to reflect on your life honestly. When you spend healthy time alone, you begin noticing things about yourself that constant distraction was hiding. You start understanding what drains your energy. You realize which relationships bring peace and which ones create suffering. You begin recognizing how much of your stress comes from constantly seeking external validation and stimulation. The outside world becomes quieter, and your inner voice becomes clearer. Many people are terrified of silence, because silence reveals truth. When life becomes quiet, you finally hear the thoughts you were avoiding. You finally notice how emotionally tired you really are. You realize how much anxiety you have been carrying. You recognize how much of your life has been shaped by fear, attachment, and people-pleasing. But this awareness is not something to fear. It is the beginning of healing. Buddhism teaches that suffering cannot heal while it remains ignored. The mind becomes healthier when you honestly observe yourself with awareness and compassion. This is why meditation and mindfulness are so important in Buddhist teachings. They teach people how to sit with themselves peacefully, instead of constantly escaping into distraction. You do not need to escape yourself forever. You do not need constant noise to avoid your emotions. You do not need endless distraction to feel alive. Sometimes what your soul truly needs is silence. Many people search for happiness everywhere except within themselves. They chase relationships, attention, money, entertainment, success, and external achievements, hoping something outside them will finally create inner peace. But no external achievement can permanently calm a mind that is disconnected from itself. You can have attention and still feel empty. You can have success and still feel emotionally lost. You can be surrounded by people and still feel deeply lonely. Why? Because inner peace cannot be built through constant external stimulation alone. Buddhism teaches that peace begins internally when the mind becomes calm, aware, and balanced. This is why connecting with yourself is one of the deepest forms of self-care. The more connected you become with your inner world, the less emotionally dependent you become on the outside world. You stop needing constant validation to feel valuable. You stop fearing solitude because you begin enjoying your own company. You stop chasing distractions because your mind no longer feels desperate to escape itself. Many people secretly hate being alone because they have never built a peaceful relationship with themselves. When they sit alone, they immediately feel restless, anxious, or empty. But this emotional discomfort is often a sign that the relationship with the self has been neglected for too long. Self-love means learning how to become emotionally safe for yourself. It means creating a peaceful inner environment where your mind no longer feels like an enemy. It means becoming comfortable with your own presence instead of constantly needing other people or distractions to avoid emptiness. Buddhism teaches that attachment creates suffering, and many people are deeply attached to stimulation without realizing it. They constantly need noise, drama, attention, social media or entertainment because stillness feels unfamiliar. But the more addicted the mind becomes to distraction, the harder it becomes to feel genuine peace. A constantly distracted mind eventually becomes exhausted. This is why many people feel mentally overwhelmed all the time. Their mind never rests. Notifications, opinions, stress, information, pressure, comparison, and endless stimulation keep attacking their attention every single day. Eventually, they lose the ability to feel calm internally because their nervous system is constantly overwhelmed. But when you begin spending intentional, quiet time with yourself, something slowly changes inside you. Your mind becomes clearer, your emotions calm down, your thoughts become less chaotic, your nervous system begins relaxing. You stop reacting emotionally to every small thing because your inner world slowly becomes more stable. Many people underestimate how powerful silence truly is. Silence gives your soul space to heal. It allows you to reconnect with parts of yourself that were buried beneath stress and distraction for years. In silence, you begin hearing your intuition again. You begin recognizing what truly matters in your life. Sometimes people spend years chasing things they never truly wanted because they were too disconnected from themselves to realize it. Society tells people what success should look like, what happiness should look like, and what kind of life they should want. But many people never stop long enough to ask themselves what genuinely brings them peace internally. This is why self-connection is so important. The more connected you become with yourself, the easier it becomes to make decisions that protect your peace instead of destroying it. You stop living completely based on other people's expectations. You begin trusting your own intuition more. You begin recognizing what your soul actually needs instead of constantly seeking external approval. Buddhism teaches that awareness creates freedom. When you understand yourself deeply, You stop becoming emotionally controlled by everything around you. You stop reacting impulsively because you become more conscious of your emotions. You stop chasing temporary distractions because you understand they cannot permanently satisfy your soul. Instead of constantly escaping life, you begin experiencing life more peacefully. Connecting with yourself also means learning how to enjoy simple moments again. Many people have become so overstimulated that they can no longer appreciate stillness, nature, quiet mornings, deep breathing, reflection, or peaceful silence. Their mind constantly needs excitement and stimulation because calmness feels unfamiliar. But Buddhism teaches that peace often exists in simplicity: a quiet walk, a calm morning, deep breathing, sitting silently, watching nature, reflecting peacefully. These simple moments reconnect the mind with the present moment. They remind you that peace does not always come from achieving more. Sometimes peace comes from slowing down enough to finally experience life fully. Many people spend their whole life mentally somewhere else. They are either replaying the past or worrying about the future. Very few people are fully present with themselves in the current moment. But life is happening now. Your peace is happening now. Your healing is happening now. The more connected you become with the present moment, the less emotionally trapped you become by anxiety and overthinking. Buddhism teaches that the mind creates suffering when it constantly lives outside the present. This is why mindfulness is so powerful. Mindfulness reconnects you with your own existence. It allows you to observe your thoughts without becoming controlled by them. When you truly connect with yourself, something beautiful begins happening internally. You stop needing to constantly prove yourself to the world. You stop feeling desperate for attention. You stop chasing people who cannot value you properly. You stop abandoning your peace for external approval. Why? Because you finally begin building a peaceful relationship with yourself. And once you truly enjoy your own presence, the outside world loses much of its emotional control over you. This is why Buddhism teaches that inner peace is one of the greatest forms of freedom. A person who is deeply connected with themselves does not constantly need distraction to survive emotionally. They do not panic when life becomes quiet. They do not feel empty when they are alone. Their peace no longer depends completely on external stimulation because they have discovered stability within themselves. This does not mean they never experience pain, sadness, or difficulty. It simply means they no longer run away from themselves constantly. They face life with more awareness, balance, and emotional understanding. And this is where real healing finally begins. The moment you stop running from yourself, the moment you allow silence to teach you, the moment you reconnect with your own soul, your entire life slowly begins changing from the inside out. 8. Stop sacrificing your happiness to please everyone. One of the biggest reasons many people lose themselves emotionally is because they spend their entire lives trying to keep everyone else happy. They constantly worry about disappointing people, upsetting people, or being judged by others. Because of this, they ignore their own needs, suppress their real emotions, and sacrifice their peace just to maintain approval from the people around them. Buddhism teaches that attachment to approval creates deep emotional suffering because your happiness becomes dependent on constantly satisfying others. Many people are taught from a young age to prioritize everyone else before themselves. They become the person who always says yes, always helps, always gives, always sacrifices, and always stays emotionally available, no matter how exhausted they feel inside. At first, this may seem kind and loving, but over time, many people slowly begin abandoning themselves completely. They ignore their emotional needs. They stay silent when something hurts them. They tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict. They constantly carry other people's problems while secretly feeling overwhelmed themselves. The sad truth is that many people become so focused on keeping everyone else comfortable that they completely forget how to care for their own peace. Buddhism teaches compassion, but true compassion does not mean destroying yourself emotionally to please everyone around you. Real compassion must also include yourself. If your kindness constantly leaves you emotionally exhausted, mentally drained, and disconnected from your own happiness, then something is deeply unbalanced inside your life. Many people secretly feel resentful, tired, and emotionally empty because they spend all their energy trying to meet everyone's expectations. They become emotionally dependent on being needed by others. They fear rejection so deeply that they continue sacrificing themselves even when it hurts their mental health. Over time, people-pleasing becomes emotionally dangerous because your identity slowly becomes based on external approval. You stop asking yourself what truly makes you happy. Instead, your entire focus becomes making sure everyone else feels satisfied with you. You begin shaping your personality around avoiding criticism and gaining acceptance. But the painful reality is that no matter how much you sacrifice yourself, you will never make everyone happy. Some people will still judge you. Some people will still misunderstand you. Some people will still criticize you no matter how much you give them. This is why Buddhism teaches that attachment to approval creates endless suffering. The more desperate you become for everyone's acceptance, the more emotionally unstable your peace becomes. Your happiness begins rising and falling based entirely on how other people react to you. Many people lose their voice because they are too afraid of upsetting others. They stay in unhealthy relationships because they fear loneliness. They continue exhausting themselves emotionally because they feel guilty whenever they try to prioritize their own needs. Some people even lose their identity completely because they spend years pretending to be someone everyone else will accept. But self-love requires honesty. You cannot truly love yourself while constantly betraying your own emotions to protect everyone else's comfort. Many people say yes when their soul is begging to say no. Many people force smiles while secretly feeling emotionally broken. Many people continue carrying emotional burdens that were never theirs to carry. And eventually, all this emotional suppression creates exhaustion deep inside the mind. Buddhism teaches that inner peace cannot exist in a life where your emotions are constantly ignored. Every time you abandon your own needs to gain approval, you slowly teach yourself that your happiness does not matter. Over time, this damages your relationship with yourself deeply. The problem with people-pleasing is that it often looks like kindness on the outside while creating suffering internally. Many people appear calm, supportive, and generous to everyone around them, but inside they feel emotionally drained because they never allow themselves space to breathe. They become emotionally available to everyone except themselves. This creates burnout, resentment, anxiety, and emotional emptiness. Many people secretly feel angry, but they suppress it because they fear conflict. They feel exhausted, but continue forcing themselves to give more. They feel overwhelmed, but still continue carrying everyone else's emotional weight. Eventually, the mind becomes tired of constantly abandoning itself. Buddhism teaches balance, because a peaceful life cannot be built through endless self-sacrifice. You cannot pour energy into everyone else forever while neglecting your own soul completely. Even the most compassionate heart eventually becomes exhausted when it never receives care in return. This is why setting boundaries is one of the deepest forms of self-respect. Many people fear boundaries because they think boundaries make them selfish or cold. But healthy boundaries simply protect your emotional well-being. Boundaries teach people how to treat you. They protect your time, your energy and your peace from constant emotional exhaustion. Without boundaries, people often continue taking from you endlessly because you never learned how to protect yourself properly. Buddhism teaches awareness, and awareness allows you to recognize when your kindness is becoming self-destruction. Not every problem is yours to solve. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your energy. Not every relationship deserves permanent space in your life. Some people only know how to receive from others without ever caring about the emotional damage they leave behind. This is why self-love requires courage. The courage to disappoint people sometimes. The courage to say no. The courage to choose peace over approval. The courage to stop shrinking yourself just to make everyone comfortable. Many people spend years trying to become emotionally acceptable to everyone around them. They hide parts of themselves to avoid rejection. They stay quiet to avoid judgment. They constantly adjust themselves based on what other people expect from them. But Buddhism teaches that attachment to identity and approval creates suffering because your mind becomes trapped in performance instead of authenticity. You stop living as your true self and begin living as the version of yourself you think others will accept. This creates deep emotional disconnection. The more fake versions of yourself you create to please others, the more disconnected you become from your real soul. Eventually, many people no longer even know who they truly are, beneath all the performance, approval-seeking, and emotional suppression. This is why solitude and self-awareness become so important. When you spend time reconnecting with yourself honestly, you begin realizing how much of your life has been shaped by fear of rejection and desire for approval. You begin recognizing how often you ignored your own intuition just to avoid upsetting others. And slowly, you start understanding that peace matters more than constant acceptance. Buddhism teaches that suffering often comes from attachment, and attachment to being liked by everyone is one of the most emotionally exhausting attachments a person can carry. The truth is that emotionally healthy people understand something powerful. Not everyone will agree with you, understand you, or approve of you, and that is completely okay. You are not responsible for making every person happy. You are not responsible for carrying everyone emotionally. You are not responsible for fixing every problem around you. Many people destroy their own mental health trying to save everyone else while secretly needing saving themselves. Self-love means finally giving yourself permission to matter too. It means understanding that your emotions deserve attention, your peace deserves protection, your happiness deserves care, your mental health deserves respect. Many people continue tolerating emotional exhaustion because they are terrified of disappointing others. But constantly sacrificing yourself does not create peace. It creates inner resentment and emotional burnout. The more you betray yourself to gain approval, the more disconnected your soul becomes. Buddhism teaches that peace comes from balance, awareness, and non-attachment. The moment you stop desperately needing everyone's approval, something inside you begins changing. You stop over-explaining yourself constantly. You stop feeling guilty for protecting your peace. You stop exhausting yourself trying to be emotionally available for everyone all the time. You begin choosing authenticity over performance. You begin choosing peace over approval. You begin choosing self-respect over emotional self-sacrifice. And this changes your entire relationship with life. Many people fear losing others if they stop people-pleasing. But the truth is that relationships built entirely on self-sacrifice are often unhealthy from the beginning. Real relationships should not require you to abandon yourself completely just to keep them alive. The people who truly care about you will not demand that you emotionally destroy yourself to earn their love. Buddhism teaches compassion, but compassion without self-respect eventually becomes suffering. This is why protecting your peace is not selfish. Resting is not selfish. Saying no is not selfish. Choosing yourself sometimes is not selfish. You cannot truly love others in a healthy way while constantly neglecting yourself internally. The more connected you become with your own worth, the less desperate you become for external approval. You stop needing everyone to validate your choices, because your peace no longer depends entirely on other people's opinions. And eventually, something beautiful begins happening inside you. You stop waking up every day trying to become acceptable to the world. You stop carrying emotional pressure that was never yours to carry. You stop sacrificing your happiness just to avoid disappointing people. Instead, you finally begin creating a life where your own peace matters too. And sometimes, one of the greatest acts of self-love is simply realizing that you do not need to destroy yourself emotionally just to be loved by others. 9. Learn to enjoy your own company. One of the deepest forms of self-love is learning how to feel peaceful when you are alone. But many people struggle with this completely. The moment life becomes quiet and nobody is around them, they immediately begin feeling empty, restless, anxious, or emotionally uncomfortable. Because of this, they constantly search for distraction, relationships, attention, entertainment, or validation, just to avoid being alone with themselves. Buddhism teaches that attachment and emotional dependence create suffering, and many people become emotionally dependent on other people because they never learned how to enjoy their own presence. Many people are terrified of solitude because solitude forces them to face themselves honestly. When there are no distractions, no conversations, no notifications, and no outside stimulation, unresolved emotions slowly begin surfacing. Suddenly the mind becomes louder. Regrets appear. Anxiety appears. Loneliness appears. Inner emptiness appears. Instead of facing these emotions and healing them, many people spend their entire lives running from silence, because silence exposes what they have been emotionally avoiding for years. This is why many people constantly stay busy even when they are exhausted. They always need noise around them. They always need attention, entertainment, or emotional stimulation, because stillness feels uncomfortable. But Buddhism teaches that true peace cannot grow in a mind that is constantly escaping itself. Many people confuse loneliness with solitude, but they are not the same thing. Loneliness is emotional disconnection. Solitude can become healing. Solitude is the space where you reconnect with yourself without the pressure, noise, and influence of the outside world. But modern society teaches people to fear being alone, as if their value only exists when they are surrounded by others. Because of this, many people enter relationships not from love, but from emotional emptiness. They become attached to anyone who temporarily distracts them from loneliness. They tolerate unhealthy situations because they are afraid of being alone. They stay emotionally dependent on people who continuously hurt them, simply because silence feels scarier than suffering. This is one of the saddest forms of self-abandonment. Buddhism teaches that attachment often creates suffering because people search for completion outside themselves instead of building inner stability first. Many people expect relationships, attention, or external love to heal the emptiness they feel inside. But no person can permanently fix emotional disconnection that exists within your own relationship with yourself. This is why some people still feel lonely even when surrounded by others. The problem is not always the absence of people. Sometimes the problem is the absence of inner connection. Many people spend years knowing everyone around them while never truly knowing themselves. They understand other people's emotions, problems, and personalities, but they never take time to understand their own inner world. They constantly seek connection externally while remaining disconnected internally. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because awareness reconnects you with yourself. The more deeply you understand your own mind, the less emotionally dependent you become on outside validation and stimulation. You begin realizing that peace does not always require constant company. Sometimes peace appears when life becomes quiet enough for your soul to finally breathe. But this requires emotional maturity. Many people cannot enjoy their own company because they secretly dislike themselves deep inside. When they sit alone, their own thoughts immediately attack them. Negative self-talk, regret, insecurity, and emotional pain begin surfacing. Because of this, they constantly seek distractions to escape their inner world. But the more you run from yourself, the more disconnected you become emotionally. Self-love means becoming emotionally safe for yourself. It means creating a peaceful relationship with your own mind so that solitude no longer feels like punishment. It means learning how to sit quietly without feeling the desperate need to escape your thoughts every moment. Buddhism teaches that the mind becomes calmer through awareness and stillness. When you begin spending healthy time alone, your nervous system slowly relaxes. You stop constantly reacting to outside noise because your attention begins turning inward. You start hearing your own thoughts more clearly. You begin understanding what truly brings you peace, instead of blindly following what society tells you should make you happy. This is where deep healing begins. Many people are constantly surrounded by noise, but secretly feel emotionally empty because they never spend meaningful time reconnecting with themselves. Their identity becomes shaped entirely by social expectations, relationships, attention, and external pressure. Slowly, they lose touch with their authentic self. But solitude gives you space to rediscover yourself again. When you spend peaceful time alone, you begin noticing things that constant distraction was hiding from you. You realize how exhausted your mind truly feels. You recognize unhealthy emotional patterns. You understand which relationships drain your energy and which ones genuinely support your peace. You begin seeing your life more clearly because your mind is no longer drowning in constant stimulation. The outside world becomes quieter, and your inner awareness becomes stronger. Buddhism teaches that awareness creates freedom. The more aware you become of your own thoughts, emotions, attachments, and habits, the less emotionally controlled you become by the world around you. Solitude strengthens this awareness because it removes distractions and forces you to reconnect with yourself honestly. Many people avoid solitude because they think being alone automatically means sadness. But some of the most peaceful and emotionally strong people learn how to enjoy their own company deeply. They no longer panic when life becomes quiet. They no longer feel emotionally incomplete without constant attention from others. They discover that peace can exist within themselves. This changes everything. When you enjoy your own company, you stop desperately chasing people for emotional survival. You stop tolerating disrespect simply because you fear loneliness. You stop becoming emotionally dependent on validation because your inner world already feels more stable. This does not mean you stop loving people or enjoying relationships. Buddhism does not teach isolation. It teaches non-attachment. There is a difference between loving people peacefully and emotionally, depending on them to feel complete. Many people confuse attachment with love. Real love allows freedom, peace, and emotional balance. Attachment creates fear, desperation, anxiety, and emotional suffering. When you cannot enjoy your own company, relationships often become emotionally unhealthy because you begin expecting other people to constantly fill your inner emptiness. You fear losing them because your emotional stability depends entirely on their presence. This creates anxiety, overthinking, jealousy, and emotional dependence. But when you build a peaceful relationship with yourself, relationships become healthier. You no longer cling desperately to people, because your happiness no longer depends completely on them. You begin loving others from peace, instead of emotional neediness. This is emotional freedom. Buddhism teaches that suffering grows when the mind becomes attached to external conditions for happiness. Many people believe they can only feel okay if someone loves them, texts them, chooses them, validates them, or stays in their life forever. But life constantly changes. People change. Relationships change. External circumstances change. If your peace depends completely on outside conditions remaining perfect, your happiness will always feel fragile. But when you learn how to enjoy your own company, something powerful happens internally. You stop feeling desperate for attention. You stop begging people to stay. You stop over-explaining yourself constantly. You stop chasing people who cannot value you properly. Why? Because your inner world slowly becomes more stable and peaceful. Many people secretly fear solitude because they have never experienced healthy solitude before. They only associate being alone with abandonment, sadness, or rejection. But solitude can become one of the most spiritually healing experiences in life when approached with awareness. Solitude allows your soul to recover from constant emotional noise. It allows your mind to rest from comparison and pressure. It gives you time to reflect on your life honestly. It reconnects you with the present moment. It helps you rediscover your authentic self beneath all the distractions. Buddhism teaches that inner peace cannot fully grow in a constantly distracted mind. This is why meditation, mindfulness, and silence are so important in Buddhist practice. They reconnect the mind with stillness. And within stillness, clarity begins appearing. Many people are emotionally exhausted because they never allow their mind to truly rest. Their attention is constantly being pulled in every direction by social media, entertainment, drama, relationships, stress, and endless information. Eventually, their nervous system becomes overwhelmed. But solitude heals this. A peaceful walk alone, sitting quietly without distraction, watching nature, breathing deeply, reflecting peacefully. These simple moments reconnect you with yourself again. The modern world constantly teaches people to escape silence, but Buddhism teaches that silence often contains wisdom. In silence, you begin hearing your intuition more clearly. You recognize which parts of your life create peace and which parts create suffering. You stop blindly chasing external validation because you finally begin listening to your own soul. Many people spend years searching everywhere for happiness while ignoring the relationship they have with themselves. But no external achievement, relationship, or validation can permanently replace inner peace. If you cannot enjoy your own company, no amount of outside attention will fully satisfy you emotionally. This is why self-love is so important. Self-love is not arrogance. Self-love is not selfishness. Self-love is building a peaceful relationship with yourself so that your happiness no longer completely depends on external conditions. The more connected you become with yourself, the less emotionally controlled you become by loneliness. Solitude stops feeling empty and starts feeling healing. You begin appreciating your own thoughts, your own energy, and your own presence. You stop running from yourself. You stop fearing silence. You stop feeling emotionally incomplete without constant validation. Instead, something beautiful begins happening inside you. Your mind becomes calmer, your emotions become more stable, your self-respect grows stronger, your peace becomes less dependent on the outside world. Buddhism teaches that true freedom begins when your happiness no longer relies completely on external attachment. And learning how to enjoy your own company is one of the most powerful forms of emotional freedom a person can ever develop. Because once you truly become peaceful within yourself, you stop settling for relationships that destroy your peace. You stop chasing people who cannot value you. You stop fearing solitude. And for the first time in your life, you finally begin feeling emotionally at home within yourself. 10. Choose yourself before life forces you to. One of the saddest truths about life is that many people spend years abandoning themselves emotionally without even realizing it. They ignore their mental health, suppress their emotions, tolerate unhealthy relationships, overwork themselves, chase approval endlessly, and constantly sacrifice their peace just to survive socially. They continue giving energy to everyone else while their own soul slowly becomes exhausted. Buddhism teaches that suffering often grows when people become disconnected from themselves for too long. Many people wait until life completely breaks them before they finally begin caring for themselves properly. They wait until burnout destroys their mental health. They wait until anxiety overwhelms their nervous system. They wait until heartbreak emotionally crushes them. They wait until loneliness forces them to reflect. They wait until exhaustion becomes unbearable. Only then do they finally realize how long they have neglected themselves internally. But Buddhism teaches awareness, because wisdom means recognizing suffering before it completely consumes your life. Self-love is not something you should wait to learn after emotional destruction. The earlier you begin reconnecting with yourself, protecting your peace, and caring for your inner world, the healthier your life becomes emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. The problem is that many people are taught to ignore themselves completely. Society rewards productivity, sacrifice, people-pleasing, and constant busyness. But very few people are taught how to truly care for their emotional well-being. Because of this, many people become disconnected from their own needs at a very young age. They learn to suppress their feelings. They learn to seek validation externally. They learn to prioritize everyone else first. They learn to hide their pain. They learn to stay emotionally available even when exhausted. Over time, this creates deep emotional imbalance inside the mind. Many people become so focused on surviving life externally that they completely neglect their internal world. But Buddhism teaches that inner peace shapes the quality of your entire life. A person may appear successful on the outside, while secretly suffering deeply inside. External achievements cannot fully heal a neglected soul. This is why choosing yourself becomes so important. Choosing yourself does not mean becoming selfish, arrogant, or uncaring. Buddhism teaches compassion, but true compassion must also include yourself. Choosing yourself means finally recognizing that your peace matters too. Your mental health matters too. Your emotional well-being matters too. Many people spend years waiting for someone else to save them emotionally. They wait for love to heal them. They wait for approval to heal them. They wait for success to heal them. They wait for relationships to heal them. But Buddhism teaches that true healing begins internally. No external person or achievement can permanently create peace inside a mind that constantly abandons itself. This is why self-awareness becomes life-changing. The moment you begin honestly observing your life, you start recognizing how many things are quietly draining your spirit. You notice how certain environments affect your emotions. You notice how constantly seeking approval exhausts your mind. You realize how much emotional pain comes from ignoring your own needs for years. And slowly, you begin understanding something powerful. You cannot continue betraying yourself forever without consequences. Many people become emotionally exhausted because they spend their entire lives living for everyone except themselves. Their decisions become controlled by fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of disappointing others, or fear of being alone. Instead of asking themselves what truly brings them peace, they constantly focus on what will make everyone else comfortable. But the more disconnected you become from yourself, the heavier life begins feeling internally. Buddhism teaches that attachment creates suffering, and many people are deeply attached to external expectations. They constantly try to become the version of themselves that society, family, relationships, or social media expects them to be. Slowly they lose touch with their authentic self. This creates inner emptiness. Many people secretly feel emotionally lost because they spent years performing for the world instead of connecting with themselves honestly. They built an identity around pleasing others while completely neglecting their own soul. This is why choosing yourself is one of the deepest forms of healing. Choosing yourself means finally listening to your own emotions instead of constantly suppressing them. It means protecting your peace instead of sacrificing it for approval. It means resting when your mind feels exhausted instead of forcing yourself endlessly. It means setting boundaries instead of allowing people unlimited access to your energy. It means accepting yourself instead of constantly seeking validation from others. Many people fear choosing themselves because they worry it will disappoint others. But Buddhism teaches that attachment to approval creates endless suffering. The truth is that no matter how much you sacrifice yourself, you will never fully satisfy everyone around you. Some people will still misunderstand you. Some people will still judge you. Some people will still criticize your choices. This is why building inner peace is more important than chasing universal approval. The moment you stop needing everyone to validate your existence, your emotional freedom begins growing. You stop constantly over-explaining yourself. You stop chasing people who cannot value you properly. You stop sacrificing your mental health just to maintain unhealthy connections. Why? Because your relationship with yourself becomes stronger. Many people fear loneliness so deeply that they continue staying in situations that destroy their peace. They tolerate disrespect, emotional manipulation, and unhappiness simply because they are afraid of being alone. But Buddhism teaches that attachment to unhealthy situations creates suffering. Sometimes choosing yourself means walking away from what continuously hurts your soul. Sometimes it means disappointing people who benefited from your lack of boundaries. Sometimes it means becoming emotionally unavailable to constant negativity. Sometimes it means finally admitting that you are tired of abandoning yourself. This requires courage because many people are conditioned to believe self-sacrifice automatically makes them good people. But there is a difference between kindness and self-destruction. Constantly neglecting your emotional well-being does not create peace. It creates burnout, resentment, anxiety, and inner emptiness. Buddhism teaches balance because life becomes unhealthy when your entire existence revolves around external pressure and emotional exhaustion. Many people wait until life forces them to slow down. Their body becomes exhausted, their mental health collapses, their relationships become toxic, their anxiety becomes overwhelming, their spirit becomes emotionally numb. Only then do they realize how disconnected they became from themselves. But you do not need to wait until complete emotional destruction to start choosing yourself. You can begin now. You can begin listening to your emotions now. You can begin protecting your peace now. You can begin forgiving yourself now. You can begin resting now. You can begin setting boundaries now. You can begin reconnecting with your soul now. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because awareness changes everything. The moment you become aware of how your habits, relationships, thoughts, and attachments affect your peace, you gain the power to change your life consciously instead of continuing to suffer automatically. Many people live their entire life emotionally asleep. They repeat unhealthy patterns for years because they never stop to reflect deeply. They continue people-pleasing, overthinking, chasing validation, suppressing emotions, and abandoning themselves because these patterns became normal to them. But awareness awakens healing. The moment you truly see how much suffering certain habits create inside your life, something begins changing internally. You stop tolerating emotional chaos so easily. You begin valuing peace more deeply. You become more intentional about protecting your mental and emotional energy. This is self-respect. Many people search for happiness externally, while completely neglecting the relationship they have with themselves. But Buddhism teaches that peace begins internally. A person who constantly abandons themselves emotionally will continue suffering no matter how much external success they achieve. You can have attention and still feel empty. You can have relationships and still feel lonely. You can have money and still feel emotionally exhausted. Why? Because external achievements cannot permanently heal internal disconnection. This is why self-care is not superficial. True self-care is spiritual and emotional. It is not only about appearance or temporary comfort. It is about creating a healthier relationship with your own mind and soul. It means speaking to yourself with compassion instead of constant criticism. It means giving yourself rest instead of endless pressure. It means allowing yourself peace instead of constantly living in survival mode. It means accepting yourself instead of endlessly comparing yourself to others. Many people secretly believe they do not deserve peace. Because of past mistakes, trauma, rejection, or emotional pain, they continue punishing themselves internally. They become addicted to emotional struggle because suffering became familiar to them. But Buddhism teaches that healing becomes possible when you stop identifying completely with your pain. Your suffering is part of your experience, but it is not your entire identity. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to grow. You are allowed to choose peace. Many people continue abandoning themselves because they are waiting for permission from the outside world. They wait for someone else to validate their worth before caring for themselves properly. But true healing begins the moment you finally give yourself that permission internally. The moment you stop treating your peace as unimportant. The moment you stop sacrificing your mental health for approval. The moment you stop abandoning your emotions, your life slowly begins changing from the inside out. Buddhism teaches impermanence because life moves quickly. Time passes whether you heal or not. Years disappear, while many people remain emotionally trapped in the same patterns, fears, and suffering. One day people wake up, realizing they spent most of their life neglecting themselves completely. This is why awareness matters now, not later. Now. Do not wait until your soul completely breaks before finally caring for yourself. Do not wait until exhaustion destroys your peace before resting. Do not wait until emotional pain becomes unbearable before setting boundaries. Do not wait until life forces you to choose yourself through suffering. Choose yourself consciously before suffering becomes your teacher. The beautiful thing about self-love is that it changes every part of your life slowly. The more peaceful your relationship becomes with yourself, the healthier your decisions become. You stop chasing things that destroy your peace. You stop seeking validation everywhere. You stop feeling emotionally desperate for attention and approval. Instead, your mind slowly becomes calmer. Your emotions become more balanced. Your relationships become healthier. Your inner world becomes lighter. And for the first time in your life, you stop surviving emotionally and finally begin living peacefully. Buddhism teaches that true freedom begins within. And one of the most powerful decisions you will ever make is finally choosing yourself before life forces you to, through pain, burnout, and emotional suffering. Because at the end of the day, your relationship with yourself shapes the quality of your entire life. And the moment you finally stop abandoning yourself, your healing truly begins.
11. Stop searching for love everywhere except within yourself. One of the deepest reasons many people suffer emotionally is because they spend their entire lives searching for love everywhere except within themselves. They search for love in relationships, attention, validation, compliments, social approval, and external acceptance. They believe someone else's love will finally heal their emptiness and make them feel complete. Buddhism teaches that attachment to external sources of happiness creates suffering because anything outside yourself can change, disappear, or leave at any moment. Many people secretly believe they are not enough on their own. Because of this, they constantly crave reassurance from the outside world. They need people to text that
their peace rises and falls depending on how loved or valued they feel by others. This creates emotional instability because your happiness becomes dependent on things you cannot fully control. Many people enter relationships hoping another person will save them from loneliness. They expect love to remove all their insecurity, sadness, fear, and emotional pain. But Buddhism teaches something very important. No external relationship can permanently heal internal disconnection. If a person secretly hates themselves, feels emotionally incomplete, or lacks inner peace, even love from others will never fully satisfy them for long. This is why some people constantly need reassurance even when they are loved. Some people still feel empty even inside relationships. Some people become emotionally attached very quickly because they are desperate to feel valuable. The problem is not always lack of love from others. Sometimes the real problem is lack of love within yourself. Many people never learned how to truly value themselves internally. Maybe they grew up feeling emotionally neglected. Maybe they experienced rejection, criticism, heartbreak, betrayal, or constant comparison. Over time, they began believing their worth depended entirely on external approval. Because of this, they spend years chasing validation from the world, hoping it will finally make them feel complete. But external validation is temporary. One compliment makes you feel good for a moment. One relationship makes you feel loved for a moment. One achievement makes you feel worthy for a moment. But if your relationship with yourself remains unhealthy, the emptiness eventually returns again. Buddhism teaches that attachment creates suffering because people become emotionally dependent on external conditions for happiness. Many people cannot feel okay unless someone is constantly giving them attention or emotional reassurance. The moment they feel ignored, rejected, or abandoned, their emotional stability completely collapses. This creates fear. Fear of losing people, fear of being alone, fear of rejection, fear of not being enough. And because of this fear, many people begin abandoning themselves completely just to keep love in their life. They tolerate disrespect. They ignore red flags. They overgive emotionally. They become desperate for approval. They stay in unhealthy relationships far too long. Why? Because deep inside they believe losing someone means losing their worth. But Buddhism teaches that true peace cannot exist when your entire identity depends on external attachment. Real self-love begins when you stop expecting other people to constantly fill emotional emptiness that only inner healing can resolve. Many people spend years trying to earn love because they secretly feel unworthy of receiving it naturally. They constantly try to prove themselves. They over-explain themselves. They become emotionally available to everyone while neglecting their own mental health. They fear being abandoned so deeply that they slowly abandon themselves first. This is one of the most painful forms of suffering. The sad truth is that many people are more committed to being loved by others than loving themselves properly. They spend hours thinking about how others feel about them while completely ignoring their own emotional needs. They desperately seek affection externally while speaking harshly to themselves internally every single day. But how can peace grow in a mind that constantly rejects itself? Buddhism teaches compassion, and true compassion must include yourself. Self-love is not arrogance or selfishness. Self-love is learning how to treat yourself with kindness, patience, respect, and emotional care. It is building a peaceful relationship with yourself so that your happiness no longer depends entirely on external validation. Many people do not realize how emotionally exhausted they are from constantly chasing love and approval. Their nervous system becomes overwhelmed because they are always worried about being accepted, chosen, valued, or desired by others. Every interaction affects their self-worth. Every rejection feels like proof that they are not enough. This creates deep emotional suffering because life becomes a constant emotional performance. Instead of living authentically, many people begin shaping their personality around what they think will make others love them more. But Buddhism teaches authenticity, because peace only grows when you stop fighting your true self constantly. The more you reject yourself internally, the more desperately you seek acceptance externally. This is why healing your relationship with yourself changes everything. The moment you begin valuing yourself internally, something powerful begins happening emotionally. You stop begging people to see your worth because you already recognize it within yourself. You stop tolerating disrespect because your self-respect becomes stronger. You stop feeling emotionally desperate for validation because your inner world slowly becomes more stable. Many people think self-love means becoming perfectly confident all the time, but Buddhism teaches balance and awareness. Self-love is not perfection. Self-love means accepting yourself compassionately, even while you are still healing and growing. It means understanding that your worth does not disappear because you made mistakes, experienced rejection, or went through pain. Your value as a human being is not determined by who chooses you or who leaves you. This realization creates emotional freedom. Many people suffer deeply because they emotionally attach their identity to relationships and external love. If someone leaves them, they feel worthless. If someone rejects them, they question their entire value. If they are alone, they immediately feel emotionally incomplete. But Buddhism teaches impermanence. Everything external changes eventually. People change, relationships change, life changes. If your happiness depends completely on outside conditions staying perfect forever, your peace will always feel fragile. This is why inner love matters so deeply. The more peaceful your relationship becomes with yourself, the less emotionally dependent you become on external attachment. You stop needing constant reassurance because your self-worth becomes internally grounded instead of externally controlled. Many people secretly believe loving themselves means they will stop loving others deeply. But Buddhism teaches something beautiful. People who truly love themselves often love others in healthier ways. Why? Because their love no longer comes from desperation, emptiness, or emotional dependency. It comes from peace. When you lack self-love, relationships often become emotionally unhealthy because you expect another person to constantly heal your insecurity and loneliness. You become afraid of losing them because your emotional stability depends entirely on their presence. This creates attachment, anxiety, jealousy, and fear. But when you build inner peace, love becomes healthier. You stop clinging desperately to people because your happiness no longer completely depends on them. You begin appreciating relationships without emotionally losing yourself inside them. This is emotional maturity. Buddhism teaches non-attachment, not because love is wrong, but because emotional dependency creates suffering. You can love people deeply without making them responsible for your entire self-worth. Many people never learned this. Instead, they spend years emotionally starving for validation because they never developed a healthy relationship with themselves. They constantly search for love outside while ignoring the emotional wounds inside that actually need healing. But healing begins internally. The moment you stop abandoning yourself emotionally, the moment you stop speaking to yourself with hatred, the moment you stop believing your worth depends on external approval, your inner world slowly begins changing. Many people search endlessly for someone to finally make them feel enough. But the painful truth is that no amount of external love can permanently heal a mind that constantly rejects itself internally. You must eventually become emotionally safe for yourself. You must eventually learn how to comfort yourself. You must eventually learn how to respect yourself. You must eventually learn how to enjoy your own presence. This is self-love. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because awareness helps you recognize how much suffering comes from attachment and emotional dependency. The more aware you become of your patterns, fears, and emotional habits, the more freedom you gain internally. You begin noticing how often you seek validation automatically. You begin noticing how much rejection controls your emotions. You begin noticing how much of your happiness depends on outside approval. And slowly you begin reclaiming your emotional power. Many people are terrified of being alone because they never built inner love. Silence feels painful because their relationship with themselves feels unhealthy. But the more compassion you develop toward yourself, the less frightening solitude becomes. You stop needing constant distraction. You stop needing endless reassurance. You stop chasing attention desperately, because your inner world slowly becomes more peaceful and emotionally stable. Buddhism teaches that peace begins within, not outside. And this changes everything about how you experience life. You stop constantly chasing people to feel complete. You stop begging for love that requires self-abandonment. You stop sacrificing your peace just to feel temporarily wanted. Instead, you begin creating love internally first. And this internal love transforms your entire life. You begin choosing healthier relationships. You begin protecting your emotional energy. You begin respecting your boundaries. You begin speaking to yourself more gently. You begin valuing your own presence. Most importantly, you stop treating yourself like someone who is incomplete without external validation. Because the truth is, you were never incomplete. You were simply disconnected from yourself. And the moment you finally reconnect with your own worth, your entire relationship with love begins changing from the inside out. Buddhism teaches that true peace comes when the mind stops desperately clinging to external attachment for happiness. And one of the greatest forms of healing is finally realizing that the love you spent your entire life searching for externally must first begin within yourself. Because once you truly learn how to love yourself peacefully, you stop settling for relationships that destroy your soul. You stop begging people to choose you. You stop fearing loneliness so deeply. And for the first time, protect your inner peace like your life depends on it. One of the greatest forms of self-love is learning how to protect your inner peace. But many people never truly realize how important peace is until their mind becomes completely exhausted. They spend years allowing stress, negativity, toxic people, emotional chaos, overthinking, comparison, and endless pressure to consume their mind every single day. Slowly, their inner world becomes heavy, anxious, and emotionally unstable. Buddhism teaches that peace is not something small or unimportant. Peace is the foundation of a healthy and meaningful life. Without inner peace, even beautiful things in life become difficult to enjoy. You can have success and still feel mentally exhausted. You can have money and still feel emotionally overwhelmed. You can be surrounded by people and still feel empty inside. Why? Because when the mind loses peace, everything in life begins feeling heavier. Many people destroy their own peace without even realizing it. They constantly surround themselves with negativity. They consume endless noise on social media. They overthink every situation. They allow toxic people unlimited access to their emotions. They replay problems in their mind all day long. Eventually, their nervous system becomes overwhelmed because their mind never truly rests. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because awareness allows you to recognize what is damaging your inner world. Many people are extremely careful about protecting physical possessions, money, and social status, but they are careless with their mental and emotional energy. They allow stress, drama, unhealthy relationships, and emotional chaos to enter their life freely. Over time, this slowly destroys inner calm. Many people wake up already feeling mentally tired before the day even begins because their mind has become overloaded for too long. Their thoughts constantly race. Anxiety becomes normal. Emotional exhaustion becomes normal. Overthinking becomes normal. They no longer remember what genuine inner calm even feels like. This is why protecting your peace is one of the deepest forms of self-care. Buddhism teaches that suffering often grows when the mind becomes attached to chaos and external stimulation. Many people are constantly emotionally reacting to everything around them. One small problem ruins their entire mood. One negative opinion controls their emotions. One stressful situation stays in their head all day long. This creates emotional instability because the mind becomes too externally controlled. A peaceful mind does not react to everything. A peaceful mind observes carefully before emotionally absorbing negativity. But many people absorb every problem, every opinion, every argument, and every emotional burden they encounter. They carry stress that does not belong to them. They mentally fight battles that are unnecessary. They allow outside chaos to enter their inner world constantly. And slowly, their peace disappears. Many people secretly believe peace will naturally come later in life after they finally achieve enough success, love, money, or validation. But Buddhism teaches something very different. Peace is not created by external perfection. Peace is created internally through awareness, balance, and emotional discipline. This means protecting your mind intentionally. It means becoming careful about what you allow into your inner world. Many people consume negativity all day without realizing how deeply it affects their emotions. Endless comparison, toxic conversations, online arguments, drama, fear-based content, stressful environments, and emotionally draining relationships slowly poison the mind over time. The mind absorbs energy constantly. If your environment is filled with emotional chaos every day, your inner world eventually becomes chaotic too. This is why Buddhism places such deep importance on mindfulness and awareness. Awareness allows you to recognize which people, habits, environments, and thoughts are quietly destroying your peace. Some people drain your spirit every time you speak to them. Some environments create constant stress inside your body. Some habits fill your mind with anxiety and comparison. Some emotional attachments create endless suffering. But many people continue tolerating these things because they have become emotionally used to chaos. The sad truth is that many people feel uncomfortable in peace because their nervous system became addicted to stress and emotional stimulation. Silence feels strange to them. Calmness feels unfamiliar. They constantly need distraction, drama, or pressure because inner stillness no longer feels normal. But Buddhism teaches that true healing begins when the mind reconnects with calmness again. A peaceful life is not built accidentally. It must be protected intentionally. This means learning how to say no to things that constantly destroy your emotional balance. It means creating boundaries with people who continuously drain your energy. It means limiting unnecessary negativity. It means becoming mindful of how your habits affect your mental state daily. Many people sacrifice their peace trying to keep everyone else comfortable. They tolerate emotional disrespect, manipulation, criticism, and toxic behavior because they fear conflict or rejection. But every time you betray your peace to avoid disappointing others, your inner world suffers. Eventually, emotional exhaustion begins appearing everywhere in your life. You become more anxious, more reactive, more emotionally tired, more mentally overwhelmed. And many people continue living this way for years without understanding why they feel so disconnected from happiness internally. Buddhism teaches that attachment creates suffering, and one of the biggest attachments many people have is attachment to emotional chaos. They constantly chase stimulation without realizing how much damage it creates inside the mind. The modern world trains people to live in constant overstimulation. Notifications, social media, arguments, pressure, comparison, noise, stress, endless information. The mind rarely gets a moment to fully breathe. This is why so many people secretly feel emotionally exhausted all the time. Their nervous system never truly rests. Even during quiet moments, their thoughts continue racing endlessly. But peace requires stillness. Peace requires slowing down. Peace requires emotional awareness. Many people think protecting their peace means avoiding all difficulty in life. But Buddhism does not teach avoidance. Life will always contain pain, uncertainty, and challenges. Protecting your peace means learning how to face life without allowing every situation to completely destroy your emotional balance internally. This is emotional strength. A peaceful person still experiences pain, but they do not mentally drown in every difficult moment. They learn how to observe emotions without becoming controlled by them completely. They stop giving every problem unlimited emotional power over their life. This changes everything. Many people mentally suffer far more than necessary because they continuously replay painful situations inside their head. One small issue becomes days of overthinking. One criticism becomes endless self-doubt. One uncomfortable moment becomes emotional suffering that lasts far longer than necessary. Buddhism teaches that the mind creates much of its own suffering through attachment, resistance, and over-identification with thoughts. The more you emotionally attach yourself to every negative experience, the heavier your inner world becomes. But awareness creates freedom. The moment you become aware of how certain thoughts, habits, and attachments affect your peace, you gain the ability to protect your inner world more consciously. You stop absorbing every opinion personally. You stop reacting emotionally to every situation. You stop allowing negativity unlimited access to your mind. And slowly your nervous system begins calming down. Many people underestimate how valuable peace truly is until they lose it. But once your mind becomes calm again, you begin realizing that peace is more valuable than attention, drama, approval, and emotional chaos. A peaceful mind thinks more clearly. A peaceful mind sleeps better. A peaceful mind enjoys life more deeply. A peaceful mind does not constantly feel emotionally overwhelmed. This is why Buddhism teaches detachment and mindfulness. Detachment does not mean becoming cold or emotionless. It means learning how to stop emotionally clinging to everything so tightly. It means understanding that not every problem deserves your mental energy. Not every opinion deserves your emotional reaction. Not every person deserves access to your peace. Not every battle deserves your attention. This awareness protects your inner world, Many people destroy their peace because they constantly try to control things outside their control. They overthink the future endlessly. They replay the past endlessly. They mentally fight reality instead of accepting life as it is. But Buddhism teaches acceptance because peace becomes possible when the mind stops constantly resisting life. Acceptance does not mean weakness. Acceptance means releasing unnecessary mental struggle. Many people create emotional suffering simply because they refuse to let go. They keep mentally holding on to old pain, unhealthy attachments, unrealistic expectations, and emotional resentment. Their mind becomes crowded with unresolved emotional weight. But peace requires release. Sometimes protecting your peace means letting go of people. Sometimes it means letting go of expectations. Sometimes it means letting go of old emotional pain. Sometimes it means letting go of the constant need to control everything. The more emotional weight you release, the lighter your mind becomes. Buddhism teaches impermanence because everything changes eventually. Pain changes, situations change, emotions change, life changes. But many people emotionally attach themselves so deeply to temporary experiences that they create permanent suffering inside their own mind. A peaceful person learns how to experience life without emotionally drowning in every moment. This does not mean they stop caring. It means they stop allowing external chaos to completely control their internal state. This is emotional wisdom. Many people search for happiness everywhere, while completely neglecting the condition of their inner world. But Buddhism teaches that peace is the beginning of true happiness. Without peace, even success feels empty. Without peace, relationships become exhausting. Without peace, the mind constantly feels restless. This is why protecting your peace is one of the most loving things you can ever do for yourself. Protecting your peace means choosing environments that support your mental health. It means protecting your energy carefully. It means spending time in silence and reflection. It means becoming mindful of what enters your mind daily. It means learning when to walk away from emotional chaos. It means giving yourself permission to rest. Many people continue abandoning their peace because they are afraid of disappointing others. But eventually you must decide what matters more: constant external approval or internal emotional stability. Because the truth is, a person without peace slowly loses themselves. And a person who protects their peace begins healing from the inside out. The more peaceful your inner world becomes, the more clearly you begin seeing life. You stop reacting impulsively. You stop chasing unnecessary drama. You stop allowing every small problem to emotionally consume you. Instead, your mind becomes calmer. Your emotions become more balanced. Your energy becomes lighter. And for the first time in a long time, life stops feeling like constant emotional survival. Buddhism teaches that inner peace is one of the greatest forms of freedom a human being can experience. Because once your mind becomes peaceful, the outside world loses much of its power to emotionally control you. And that is when true healing finally begins. 13. Stop waiting for the perfect moment to start healing. One of the biggest mistakes many people make is believing they will finally start healing later. They tell themselves they will focus on their mental health after life becomes less stressful, after they become more successful, after someone finally loves them properly, or after everything around them feels perfect. But Buddhism teaches that life is always changing, and uncertainty never completely disappears. If you keep waiting for the perfect moment to begin healing, loving yourself, and protecting your peace, you may spend your entire life emotionally suffering while hoping things will magically improve one day. Many people live trapped in emotional pain for years because they continuously delay caring for themselves. They know they are exhausted. They know their mind feels heavy. They know certain relationships are hurting them. They know anxiety, overthinking, and emotional burnout are destroying their peace. But instead of facing these things honestly, they continue distracting themselves while waiting for some future version of life where healing will suddenly become easier. But healing rarely begins when life becomes perfect. Healing usually begins the moment you finally become tired of abandoning yourself. Many people secretly believe they must first become successful, attractive, loved, emotionally perfect, or fully confident before they deserve peace. Because of this, they constantly postpone self-care and emotional healing. They think happiness is something they will finally allow themselves to experience later, after they accomplish enough externally. But Buddhism teaches something very important. Peace is not a reward you receive after becoming perfect. Peace is something you begin creating internally now through awareness, compassion, and conscious living. The problem is that many people are deeply attached to the idea that something outside themselves will eventually save them emotionally. They wait for the perfect relationship, the perfect opportunity, the perfect amount of money, or the perfect life circumstances to finally feel okay internally. But even when external conditions improve, emotional suffering often remains if the inner world has been neglected for years. This is why some people achieve success and still feel empty. Some people find love and still feel anxious. Some people finally get everything they once wanted and still feel emotionally exhausted. Because healing cannot be delayed forever without consequences. Buddhism teaches that suffering grows when the mind avoids reality. Many people know deep inside what needs healing, but they are afraid to face it honestly. Some people avoid healing because they fear confronting painful emotions. Others stay busy constantly because silence would force them to acknowledge how emotionally tired they truly are. So instead of healing, they distract themselves, they scroll endlessly, they overwork themselves, they chase validation, they stay in unhealthy relationships. They fill every quiet moment with noise and stimulation, anything to avoid sitting honestly with their inner pain. But Buddhism teaches mindfulness because awareness is the beginning of healing. The moment you stop running from yourself and begin observing your inner world honestly, transformation slowly becomes possible. Healing starts when you finally admit, I am tired, I am emotionally exhausted. I have been neglecting myself. I cannot continue living this way forever. This honesty changes everything. Many people wait years before listening to the warning signs their mind and body have been giving them. Anxiety becomes normal. Emotional numbness becomes normal. Overthinking becomes normal. Constant stress becomes normal. They continue surviving emotionally instead of truly living peacefully. But the longer emotional suffering remains ignored, the heavier it often becomes internally. This is why Buddhism teaches awareness in the present moment. Healing cannot happen fully in the future because life only exists now. The only moment you truly have power to change your inner world is this present moment. Not next year, not someday, now. Many people spend their entire life emotionally postponing themselves. They prioritize everyone else's needs while continuously ignoring their own. They wait for permission to rest. They wait for permission to set boundaries. They wait for permission to choose peace. But no one else can heal your relationship with yourself for you. This is something you must eventually choose consciously. Many people secretly hope life will force healing upon them automatically with time. But time alone does not heal everything. Awareness heals. Reflection heals. Compassion heals. Honest inner work heals. Some people carry the same emotional pain for decades because they never truly face it. Buddhism teaches impermanence because life moves quickly. Years disappear faster than people realize. One day many people wake up and suddenly realize they spent most of their life emotionally disconnected from themselves. They spent years chasing approval, years overthinking, years feeling emotionally exhausted, years tolerating unhappiness, years neglecting their peace, and suddenly they realize how much life passed while they were mentally trapped in suffering. This realization can become painful, but it can also become awakening, because sometimes awareness of suffering becomes the beginning of freedom from it. Many people are afraid to start healing because healing requires change, and change feels uncomfortable at first. Healing may require setting boundaries with people who benefited from your lack of self-respect. Healing may require letting go of unhealthy attachments. Healing may require facing painful emotions you spent years avoiding. But Buddhism teaches that growth often begins where attachment ends. You cannot continue holding on to everything that destroys your peace while expecting inner calm to magically appear. Sometimes healing requires letting go of old emotional pain, letting go of guilt, letting go of toxic relationships, letting go of unhealthy habits, letting go of the constant need for external validation. Many people resist this because suffering, even painful suffering, often becomes familiar. The mind becomes attached to old patterns because they feel emotionally safe, even when they create unhappiness. But awareness creates the opportunity for transformation. The moment you begin recognizing what is destroying your peace, you gain the power to slowly change your life. And healing does not require perfection. This is something many people misunderstand. Buddhism teaches compassion because healing is not about becoming perfect overnight. Healing is about slowly becoming more conscious, more balanced, and more connected with yourself over time. Some days will still feel difficult. Some wounds will still take time. Some habits will still require patience to change. But the important thing is that you begin. Many people never begin because they believe healing must happen perfectly or immediately. But healing often happens quietly through small moments of awareness repeated consistently. Choosing rest instead of burnout. Choosing peace instead of unnecessary drama. Choosing boundaries instead of emotional self-destruction. Choosing self-compassion instead of constant self-hatred. These small choices slowly transform the inner world. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because the present moment contains the opportunity for change. Every moment you become more aware of your thoughts, emotions, habits, and attachments, you move one step closer toward inner peace. Many people believe healing must look dramatic, but often the deepest healing happens internally and quietly. A calmer mind, a softer inner voice, less emotional desperation, less attachment to validation, more peace in solitude, more emotional balance. These changes may seem small at first, but over time they completely transform the quality of your life. The beautiful thing about healing is that it affects everything around you. When your inner world becomes healthier, your relationships improve, your decisions improve, your emotional reactions improve, your energy changes, your connection with life changes. You stop living entirely from fear and emotional survival. Instead, you begin living more consciously. Buddhism teaches that peace grows when the mind becomes less attached to suffering and more connected with awareness. But this process requires presence. It requires honesty. It requires willingness to stop running from yourself constantly. Many people spend years hoping someone else will finally save them emotionally. But true healing often begins the moment you stop waiting for rescue and finally start caring for yourself properly. No one else can build inner peace for you. No one else can heal your relationship with yourself for you. No one else can choose emotional awareness for you. This is your responsibility. And although this may sound heavy, it is actually empowering, because it means your healing does not completely depend on external circumstances anymore. You do not need perfect conditions to begin healing. You do not need perfect confidence to begin healing. You do not need perfect relationships to begin healing. You simply need honesty and willingness. Many people think healing means never feeling pain again, but Buddhism teaches that pain is part of life. Healing means changing your relationship with suffering. It means no longer allowing pain to completely control your identity and emotional state forever. A healed person still experiences sadness, disappointment, and difficulty, but they no longer abandon themselves during hard moments. This changes everything. Many people are kind to others during suffering, but cruel to themselves. They attack themselves mentally whenever life becomes difficult. But self-love means learning how to support yourself emotionally instead of becoming your own enemy. Healing begins when your relationship with yourself becomes safer, when your mind becomes less harsh, when your inner world becomes less chaotic, when you finally stop emotionally abandoning yourself every day. Buddhism teaches that awareness creates liberation, because awareness breaks unconscious suffering patterns. The more conscious you become of how you think, react, attach, and emotionally suffer, the more freedom you gain internally. And eventually something beautiful begins happening. You stop waiting for life to magically change before caring for yourself. You stop postponing peace. You stop postponing healing. You stop postponing self-love. Instead, you begin creating inner peace intentionally now. One decision at a time. One boundary at a time. One mindful moment at a time. One act of self-compassion at a time. And slowly, your entire relationship with life changes. Your mind becomes calmer. Your emotions become lighter. Your nervous system becomes less overwhelmed. Your self-respect becomes stronger. Most importantly, you stop surviving emotionally and begin truly living. Buddhism teaches that life is happening now, not someday in the future. And one of the greatest forms of self-love is realizing that you do not need to wait for the perfect moment to finally begin healing your mind, protecting your peace, and caring for your soul. Because the perfect moment to start healing was never later. It was always now. 14. Your life changes the moment you finally respect yourself. One of the most powerful transformations a person can experience begins the moment they finally start respecting themselves. Many people spend years searching for happiness, peace, love, and emotional stability while completely neglecting the relationship they have with themselves. They allow people to mistreat them. They constantly seek approval. They tolerate emotional exhaustion, and they abandon their own needs just to feel accepted. Buddhism teaches that suffering often grows when people lose connection with their own worth and continue living without self-awareness or self-respect. The truth is that many people do not actually hate themselves openly. Instead, they slowly disrespect themselves through the way they live every day. They stay in situations that destroy their peace. They tolerate treatment that hurts their spirit. They ignore their emotional exhaustion. They constantly criticize themselves internally. They betray their own boundaries just to keep others comfortable. Over time, these small forms of self-neglect slowly damage the soul. Many people secretly feel emotionally empty because deep inside they stopped valuing themselves properly a long time ago. They became so focused on being loved, accepted, and needed by others that they forgot how to truly respect themselves internally. Buddhism teaches that attachment to external validation creates suffering because your peace becomes controlled by the opinions and behavior of other people. This is why so many people feel emotionally unstable. Their self-worth changes depending on how others treat them. If someone praises them, they feel valuable. If someone ignores them, rejects them, or criticizes them, they suddenly feel worthless again. But real self-respect is different. Real self-respect means recognizing your value even when the outside world fails to validate you. Many people think self-respect is arrogance or pride, but Buddhism teaches balance and awareness. Self-respect is not believing you are better than others. Self-respect is understanding that your peace, emotions, time, energy, and mental health matter too. It means refusing to continuously abandon yourself emotionally just to gain approval from the outside world. The sad truth is that many people do not realize how much emotional suffering comes from lack of self-respect. When you do not respect yourself, you begin accepting things that slowly destroy your peace. You tolerate unhealthy relationships. You allow emotional manipulation. You ignore your own boundaries. You continuously seek validation externally. You settle for less than you deserve because deep inside you no longer believe your peace truly matters. This creates emotional exhaustion because your soul constantly feels neglected. Buddhism teaches awareness because awareness allows you to recognize when your own behavior is contributing to your suffering. Many people blame the world for their emotional pain while continuing habits that disrespect themselves every single day. Some people constantly stay around negativity even when it destroys their mental health. Some people endlessly compare themselves to others until they lose all inner peace. Some people continue chasing people who repeatedly disrespect them. Some people constantly overwork themselves until burnout becomes normal. And over time, the mind becomes emotionally tired because it feels unloved even by its own owner. This is why self-respect changes everything. The moment you truly begin valuing yourself internally, your entire life slowly starts shifting. You stop tolerating things that destroy your peace. You become more mindful about who and what enters your life. You stop emotionally begging people to choose you because you already recognize your own worth. This is emotional freedom. Many people spend years trying to earn love from people who cannot even respect them properly. They constantly overgive, over-explain, and over-sacrifice themselves, hoping someone will finally see their value. But Buddhism teaches that attachment to external approval creates endless suffering. The more desperate you become for validation, the more disconnected you often become from yourself. This is why many people lose themselves inside relationships, friendships, careers, and social expectations. They shape their entire identity around becoming acceptable to others while silently abandoning their own truth. But self-respect requires honesty. It requires asking yourself difficult questions. Does this environment support my peace? Does this relationship respect my emotional well-being? Am I betraying myself just to avoid rejection? Am I constantly abandoning my needs for approval? These questions awaken awareness, and awareness creates transformation. Many people fear self-respect because they think it will make them lose people. But often the people who disappear when you finally respect yourself were only comfortable when you lacked boundaries. Some people benefit from your insecurity, your people-pleasing, and your emotional self-sacrifice. The moment you begin valuing your peace, unhealthy dynamics often become uncomfortable for others. This is why self-respect requires courage. The courage to say no. The courage to walk away. The courage to stop chasing people. The courage to choose peace over approval. Many people continue suffering emotionally because they fear disappointing others more than they fear losing themselves. They remain trapped in unhealthy cycles because acceptance from others feels more important than inner peace. But Buddhism teaches that attachment creates suffering, and attachment to external validation is one of the heaviest emotional burdens a person can carry. The moment you stop needing everyone to approve of you, something inside you becomes lighter. You stop over-explaining yourself constantly. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into other people's expectations. You stop tolerating disrespect just to avoid loneliness. Why? Because your self-respect becomes stronger than your fear of rejection. This changes the entire quality of your life. Many people think confidence comes from external success, appearance, money, or attention. But Buddhism teaches that true confidence often comes from inner alignment. It comes from living in a way that no longer betrays your soul constantly. When you respect yourself, your mind becomes calmer, because you stop emotionally fighting yourself every day. You stop forcing yourself to stay where your spirit suffers. You stop ignoring your emotional needs. You stop allowing everyone unlimited access to your peace. And slowly, your inner world becomes healthier. Many people secretly feel emotionally exhausted because they continuously say yes when they truly want to say no. They agree to things that drain them. They tolerate behavior that hurts them. They suppress their feelings to avoid conflict. Over time, this creates resentment, burnout, and emotional numbness. But self-respect means listening to yourself honestly. It means understanding that your emotions deserve attention too. Your peace deserves protection too. Your energy deserves care too. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because awareness reconnects you with your inner truth. When you become more mindful, you begin recognizing how often you abandon yourself for temporary approval. You notice how certain people affect your nervous system. You recognize how emotionally heavy your life becomes when your boundaries disappear. And gradually, you stop living unconsciously. You begin making decisions that support your peace instead of destroying it. This is healing. Many people wait for someone else to finally validate their worth before respecting themselves. They believe once enough people love them, admire them, or choose them, they will finally feel valuable internally. But Buddhism teaches that external validation cannot permanently create inner peace. You can receive attention and still feel empty. You can receive praise and still secretly hate yourself. You can be loved by others and still lack self-respect internally. Because true peace begins within. This is why self-respect is so powerful. The moment you truly begin respecting yourself, your standards change naturally. You stop settling for emotional chaos. You stop accepting relationships built entirely on disrespect and emotional exhaustion. You stop allowing your mental health to be destroyed just to maintain external approval. Many people fear this transformation because it often requires letting go of familiar suffering. And familiar suffering sometimes feels emotionally safer than uncertain peace. But Buddhism teaches impermanence because life constantly changes. If you continue betraying yourself emotionally forever, suffering only grows heavier over time. Eventually your mind becomes tired of being neglected. This is why burnout, anxiety, emotional numbness, and deep exhaustion become so common. The soul becomes overwhelmed from years of being ignored. But healing begins the moment you finally start listening to yourself again. Many people spend years disconnected from their intuition because they became too focused on outside voices. Society tells them how to live. Social media tells them what success should look like. Other people tell them who they should become. And slowly, they lose connection with their authentic self. But self-respect reconnects you with your inner voice again. You stop constantly seeking permission from the world to protect your peace. You stop apologizing for needing rest. You stop feeling guilty for setting boundaries. You stop chasing people who cannot value you properly. Because deep inside, you finally begin understanding something important. Your peace matters. Your mental health matters. Your emotional well-being matters. Many people secretly believe they deserve suffering because of past mistakes, trauma, rejection, or failure. Because of this, they continue tolerating unhappiness as if peace is something meant only for others. But Buddhism teaches compassion, and true compassion includes yourself too. You deserve kindness from yourself. You deserve emotional safety. You deserve relationships that do not constantly destroy your spirit. You deserve peace. The moment you truly begin believing this internally, your life starts changing, your energy changes, your decisions change, your boundaries become stronger, your emotional dependency decreases. You stop living from desperation and begin living from self-awareness. This is one of the deepest forms of freedom. Many people think self-respect means becoming emotionally hard or distant. But real self-respect actually creates healthier love and connection. Why? Because you stop loving people from desperation and emotional emptiness. You begin loving from balance instead of attachment. You no longer need to abandon yourself to maintain relationships. You no longer tolerate emotional suffering just to avoid being alone. You no longer chase people endlessly to feel worthy. Because your relationship with yourself becomes more stable. Buddhism teaches that suffering decreases when attachment decreases. The more secure you become internally, the less emotionally controlled you become by external approval, rejection and fear. This creates peace. A peaceful person is not someone with a perfect life. A peaceful person is someone who stopped betraying themselves constantly. And this is what self-respect truly does. It ends the war between you and yourself. The moment you finally respect yourself, you stop treating your own emotions like they do not matter. You stop destroying your mental health to keep everyone else comfortable. You stop chasing validation from people who cannot even recognize your worth properly. Instead, you begin building a life rooted in awareness, balance, boundaries, and inner peace. And slowly, something beautiful begins happening. Your mind becomes quieter. Your nervous system relaxes. Your emotional exhaustion decreases. Your self-worth becomes internally grounded. And for the first time in a long time, you begin feeling emotionally safe within yourself again. Buddhism teaches that inner peace is one of the greatest forms of freedom a person can experience. And one of the most powerful steps toward that peace is finally deciding that you will no longer abandon, disrespect, or emotionally neglect yourself just to be accepted by the world. Because your life truly changes the moment you finally realize that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is self-respect. 15. Stop treating yourself like you are hard to love. One of the deepest wounds many people carry silently is the belief that they are somehow difficult to love, not good enough, or emotionally unworthy. Even if they never say it out loud, this belief quietly shapes the way they live, the relationships they choose, and the way they treat themselves every single day. Buddhism teaches that suffering often begins inside the mind, long before it appears in the outside world. And one of the most painful forms of suffering is constantly feeling like your existence is not enough. Many people grow up experiencing rejection, criticism, emotional neglect, comparison, or painful heartbreak. Over time, these experiences slowly create negative beliefs deep inside the mind. Some people begin believing they must constantly earn love through perfection, sacrifice, achievement, or people-pleasing. Others begin believing that if someone leaves them, rejects them, or fails to value them, it must mean something is wrong with them internally. This creates deep emotional pain because the mind begins attacking itself constantly. Many people secretly spend their entire lives trying to prove they are worthy of love. They overgive in relationships. They tolerate disrespect. They become emotionally available to everyone. They constantly seek validation. They shape their personality around pleasing others. Why? Because deep inside they fear being abandoned, unloved, or not enough. Buddhism teaches that attachment creates suffering, and many people become deeply attached to external approval because they lack inner acceptance. The more disconnected you become from your own worth, the more desperate you often become for other people to confirm your value. This is why many people stay in unhealthy relationships far longer than they should. They accept treatment that destroys their peace, because part of them believes they should simply be grateful someone chose them at all. Some people become so afraid of loneliness that they tolerate emotional neglect, manipulation, disrespect, and unhappiness just to avoid being alone. But self-love changes the moment you stop treating yourself like someone who must beg to be valued. Many people do not realize how cruel they are to themselves internally. They constantly criticize their appearance, their personality, their past mistakes and their flaws. They compare themselves endlessly to other people until their confidence completely disappears. Even when they achieve something meaningful, they still feel emotionally inadequate because deep inside they already decided they are not enough. This creates emotional exhaustion because the mind never feels safe. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because awareness allows you to observe how much suffering your thoughts are creating internally. Many people are not only suffering because of life itself, they are suffering because of the way they continuously think about themselves. The mind becomes what it repeatedly believes. If you constantly tell yourself you are difficult to love, eventually your entire life begins reflecting that belief. You settle for less. You tolerate unhealthy treatment. You fear abandonment constantly. You emotionally chase validation because you no longer trust your own worth internally. But Buddhism teaches compassion, and true compassion must include yourself too. You are not meant to spend your whole life emotionally fighting your own existence. Many people become addicted to proving themselves because they believe love must always be earned through suffering. They feel guilty resting. Guilty saying no. Guilty setting boundaries. Guilty prioritizing their peace. They become emotionally exhausted because they constantly feel pressure to deserve love from others. But real love does not require self-destruction. Real love does not demand that you abandon your peace constantly. Real love does not require you to become emotionally smaller just to be accepted. The painful truth is that many people learned unhealthy ideas about love very early in life. Some people only received attention when they performed well, sacrificed themselves, or became useful to others. Over time, they began associating their worth with external validation instead of inner value. This creates emotional dependency because the mind constantly seeks reassurance externally. Many people secretly feel anxious whenever someone becomes distant because they immediately assume they are the problem. They overthink conversations endlessly. They replay interactions in their mind. They fear rejection constantly because deep inside they already believe they are not enough. This is emotional suffering created by lack of self-love. Buddhism teaches that attachment to identity and validation creates suffering because your peace becomes controlled by outside conditions. When your self-worth depends entirely on how others respond to you, life becomes emotionally unstable. One compliment makes you feel worthy. One rejection destroys your confidence. One relationship becomes your entire emotional identity. This creates endless emotional exhaustion. But healing begins the moment you stop seeing yourself as someone who must constantly earn the right to be loved. Many people search desperately for external love because they never developed inner love. They expect relationships to heal insecurities they never faced internally. They expect attention to remove loneliness. They expect validation to remove self-doubt. But no external love can permanently heal a mind that constantly rejects itself internally. This is why some people still feel emotionally empty, even when loved by others. Because the deepest relationship in your life is always the relationship you have with yourself. Buddhism teaches awareness, because awareness allows you to recognize unhealthy emotional patterns before they completely consume your peace. The moment you become aware of how harshly you treat yourself internally, healing becomes possible. You begin noticing your negative self-talk. You begin noticing how often you compare yourself. You begin noticing how much of your emotional suffering comes from believing you are not enough. And slowly, you begin changing the relationship you have with yourself. This is where self-love truly begins. Self-love is not becoming perfect. Self-love is not believing you have no flaws. Self-love means treating yourself with compassion, even while imperfect. It means understanding that your mistakes do not remove your worth. It means understanding that rejection does not define your value. It means understanding that you deserve peace without constantly proving yourself. Many people secretly believe they must become more attractive, successful, productive, confident, or emotionally perfect before they deserve love. But Buddhism teaches that suffering grows when the mind constantly chases conditions before allowing itself peace. If I achieve more, then I will finally feel enough. If someone chooses me, then I will finally feel worthy. If people admire me, then I will finally love myself. But peace cannot fully grow, while your worth always depends on external conditions. Eventually, you must stop postponing your own acceptance. Many people are kinder to strangers than they are to themselves. They comfort other people during pain but attack themselves during struggle. They forgive others but hold endless resentment toward themselves internally. This creates inner conflict, and inner conflict destroys peace. Buddhism teaches balance because healing requires compassion toward your own mind too. A peaceful life cannot exist while your thoughts constantly make you feel emotionally unsafe. You deserve kindness from yourself. You deserve patience from yourself. You deserve forgiveness from yourself. Many people spend years emotionally starving for love, while rejecting themselves every single day internally. They seek validation from everyone around them because they never learned how to emotionally support themselves properly. But the moment you begin treating yourself with more compassion, your entire inner world slowly changes. Your nervous system relaxes, your anxiety decreases, your emotional desperation decreases. You stop chasing people as intensely. Why? Because your worth no longer feels completely dependent on external validation. This creates emotional freedom. Many people fear loving themselves because they think self-love will make them selfish, arrogant, or emotionally distant. But Buddhism teaches that healthy self-love actually creates healthier relationships. Why? Because when you respect yourself internally, you stop allowing emotional chaos into your life so easily. You stop tolerating disrespect. You stop begging people to choose you. You stop shrinking yourself for acceptance. You stop over-explaining your existence constantly. Instead, you begin valuing your peace more deeply. Many people continue suffering because they are emotionally attached to being chosen by others more than they are committed to choosing themselves. They build their entire identity around relationships, approval, and external love, while completely neglecting their own inner world. But Buddhism teaches that attachment creates suffering because external conditions always change. People leave. Opinions change. Relationships shift. Life changes constantly. If your peace depends completely on external validation remaining stable forever, your emotional world will always feel fragile. This is why inner love matters so deeply. Inner love creates emotional stability. It allows you to enjoy relationships without emotionally losing yourself inside them. It allows you to experience rejection without completely collapsing internally. It allows you to be alone without feeling worthless. This is emotional maturity. Many people never learned how to emotionally comfort themselves. The moment life becomes painful, they immediately seek distraction, validation, or outside reassurance because they do not know how to sit compassionately with their own emotions. But Buddhism teaches mindfulness because awareness reconnects you with yourself. The more connected you become with your inner world, the less emotionally desperate you become for outside approval. You stop treating yourself like someone who is difficult to love. You stop viewing your flaws as proof that you are unworthy. You stop measuring your value entirely through other people's opinions. And slowly, your relationship with yourself becomes softer and healthier. Many people believe self-love happens suddenly one day, but usually self-love grows quietly through small moments repeated consistently. Speaking to yourself more kindly, resting without guilt, protecting your peace, walking away from disrespect, forgiving yourself for your past, choosing yourself instead of constantly chasing approval. These small acts slowly rebuild your relationship with yourself, and eventually something beautiful begins happening internally. You stop feeling emotionally desperate for validation. You stop tolerating relationships that destroy your peace. You stop viewing yourself as someone who must constantly earn love. Instead, you begin realizing something powerful. You were always worthy of love. Not because you became perfect. Not because everyone approved of you. Not because you never made mistakes. But because your value was never dependent on external validation in the first place. Buddhism teaches that suffering decreases when attachment decreases. And one of the most painful attachments many people carry is attachment to the belief that they are somehow not enough. But the moment you finally release that belief, your healing begins. Your peace grows. Your self-respect strengthens. And for the first time in your life, you stop treating yourself like someone who is hard to love. Instead, you finally begin becoming emotionally safe, compassionate, and loving toward yourself too. 16. The more you love yourself, the less you need to prove anything to anyone. One of the clearest signs that a person is disconnected from themselves is the constant need to prove their worth to the world. Many people spend their entire lives trying to impress others, gain approval, seek validation, and convince people of their value. They feel pressure to constantly explain themselves, defend their choices, show their success, prove their intelligence, prove their kindness, or prove that they deserve love and respect. Buddhism teaches that attachment to external validation creates deep emotional suffering because your peace becomes dependent on how other people see you. Many people secretly feel exhausted because they are constantly performing emotionally. Instead of simply living peacefully, they feel pressure to maintain an image for the world. They want everyone to understand them, admire them, approve of them, and validate them. Because of this, even simple situations become emotionally draining. One criticism ruins their confidence. One rejection destroys their mood. One misunderstanding keeps them overthinking all day. Why? Because deep inside they still believe their worth depends on outside approval. This creates emotional instability because your identity becomes controlled by external reactions instead of inner peace. Buddhism teaches that suffering often begins when the mind becomes attached to validation and recognition. Many people cannot feel okay unless someone constantly reassures them that they are valuable. They need people to notice them, praise them, or emotionally confirm their worth. Without this validation, they immediately begin doubting themselves again. This is why so many people feel emotionally exhausted in modern life. Social media, comparison, attention-seeking, and constant external pressure have trained many people to depend on outside approval for emotional survival. People constantly compare their life, appearance, success, relationships, and achievements to others. They become obsessed with how they are perceived instead of focusing on inner peace. But the more you chase validation externally, the more disconnected you often become from yourself internally. Many people secretly fear being misunderstood more than they fear losing themselves. Because of this, they constantly explain themselves to everyone around them. They over-explain their choices, boundaries, emotions, silence, and decisions because they desperately want to be accepted and understood. But Buddhism teaches that true peace begins when you stop needing everyone to approve of your existence. Not everyone will understand your journey. Not everyone will agree with your growth. Not everyone will validate your choices. And that is completely okay. Many people waste years emotionally exhausting themselves trying to convince people who were never truly trying to understand them in the first place. They constantly defend themselves against criticism, judgment, and misunderstanding because they secretly believe their worth depends on changing other people's opinions. But real self-love changes this completely. The more deeply you value yourself internally, the less desperate you become for external validation. You stop feeling the need to constantly prove your worth because your self-respect no longer depends entirely on other people's reactions. This creates emotional freedom. Many people constantly seek recognition because deep inside they feel emotionally invisible or inadequate. Maybe they grew up feeling ignored, criticized, or emotionally unsupported. Over time, they developed a strong need for validation because they never fully learned how to value themselves internally. So they spend years trying to prove themselves, trying to prove they are successful enough, attractive enough, important enough, good enough, worthy enough. But Buddhism teaches that attachment to identity and external recognition creates suffering because the mind becomes trapped in endless comparison and emotional insecurity. No amount of outside validation can permanently satisfy a mind that secretly feels unworthy internally. This is why some people achieve success and still feel empty. Some people receive attention and still feel insecure. Some people become admired by others but still secretly hate themselves. Because the real issue was never lack of recognition. The real issue was lack of inner peace and self-acceptance. Many people do not realize how much emotional energy they waste trying to maintain an image for the world. They constantly worry about how they are perceived. They fear judgment. They fear criticism. They fear rejection. Because of this, they stop living authentically and begin emotionally performing for approval. But performance is exhausting. Pretending to be someone else is exhausting. Constantly seeking validation is exhausting. Living for other people's opinions is exhausting. And eventually, the soul becomes tired. Buddhism teaches mindfulness because awareness allows you to recognize how many of your actions are being controlled by fear of judgment instead of genuine inner truth. Many people make decisions based on what will gain approval instead of what truly supports their peace. They stay in careers that destroy them emotionally because society approves of them. They stay in unhealthy relationships because they fear what people will think if they leave. They suppress their authentic personality because they fear rejection. Over time, they lose connection with themselves completely. This is why self-love is so important. Self-love reconnects you with your authentic self again. The more peaceful your relationship becomes with yourself, the less pressure you feel to constantly impress the world. You stop chasing approval because your inner worth becomes more stable internally. You no longer need everyone to clap for you to feel valuable. You no longer need constant reassurance to feel enough. You no longer need to explain every decision to everyone around you. Why? Because your peace becomes internally grounded instead of externally controlled. This changes everything emotionally. Many people believe confidence means becoming loud, dominant, or highly admired. But Buddhism teaches a quieter form of confidence. True confidence often appears calm, peaceful, and emotionally stable. It is the ability to remain secure within yourself even when the outside world misunderstands you. A person who truly values themselves does not constantly seek approval. They do not beg people to recognize their worth. They do not over-explain themselves endlessly. They simply live authentically. This is real emotional strength. Many people continue proving themselves because they secretly believe they are not enough as they are. So they constantly try to earn worth externally through achievement, productivity, relationships, appearance, attention, or social approval. But self-love means realizing your value already exists before external validation appears. This realization creates deep inner peace. You stop emotionally collapsing every time someone disagrees with you. You stop feeling desperate to defend yourself constantly. You stop taking every opinion personally, because your identity no longer depends completely on outside approval. Buddhism teaches impermanence because external validation is unstable. People's opinions constantly change. Some people will admire you today and criticize you tomorrow. If your peace depends entirely on external approval remaining consistent forever, your emotional state will always feel fragile. But inner self-respect creates stability. Many people are emotionally controlled by social comparison because they constantly measure themselves against others. Social media intensifies this suffering even more. People compare their success, appearance, relationships, lifestyle, and achievements constantly until they feel emotionally inadequate. But Buddhism teaches awareness because comparison disconnects you from the present moment and your authentic journey. Every person has different struggles, timing, lessons, and experiences in life. Constant comparison only creates unnecessary emotional suffering. The more you love yourself, the less you need to compete for validation. You stop trying to prove your life is better than everyone else's. You stop seeking attention to feel worthy. You stop needing everyone to understand your journey perfectly. This creates emotional calmness. Many people are afraid to stop proving themselves because they believe without validation they will become invisible or unimportant. But often the opposite happens. The moment you stop emotionally chasing approval, your energy becomes calmer, stronger, and more authentic. You stop appearing desperate for acceptance. You stop forcing connections. You stop emotionally performing. And people begin feeling the difference naturally. Buddhism teaches non-attachment because attachment to validation creates endless anxiety. The more dependent you become on approval, the more emotionally unstable your peace becomes. But the more internally grounded you become, the less outside opinions control your emotional state. This does not mean you stop caring about others completely. Buddhism teaches compassion and connection. But there is a difference between healthy connection and emotional dependency. Healthy people appreciate love and support without becoming emotionally controlled by them completely. This is emotional maturity. Many people secretly fear silence because silence removes external validation and forces them to face themselves honestly. Without distraction and attention, they suddenly feel emotionally empty because their identity became too externally dependent. But self-love changes this. The more connected you become with yourself, the more comfortable you become simply existing without needing constant recognition. You stop feeling pressure to prove your value every moment. You stop oversharing for validation. You stop chasing people who cannot appreciate you. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into social expectations. Instead, your mind becomes calmer. Your emotions become more balanced. Your nervous system relaxes because your identity no longer depends entirely on outside approval. Buddhism teaches that peace grows when attachment decreases. The less attached you become to validation, recognition, and approval, the freer your mind becomes internally. And eventually something beautiful begins happening. You stop waking up every day trying to become acceptable to the world. You stop emotionally performing constantly. You stop seeking permission to value yourself. Instead, you begin living more authentically and peacefully. You begin trusting yourself more deeply. You begin respecting your own choices. You begin protecting your peace instead of sacrificing it for approval. And for the first time in your life, you realize you no longer need to constantly prove your worth to people who cannot even recognize your value properly. Because real self-love changes everything. The more deeply you love yourself, the less desperate you become for validation. The more deeply you respect yourself, the less emotionally controlled you become by judgment. The more peaceful your inner world becomes, the less pressure you feel to constantly impress everyone around you. Buddhism teaches that true freedom begins within. And one of the greatest forms of freedom a person can experience is finally reaching a place where their happiness, peace, and self-worth no longer depend completely on proving themselves to the outside world. Because once you truly value yourself internally, you stop chasing approval endlessly. You stop begging to be understood. You stop emotionally exhausting yourself trying to convince people of your worth. Instead, you finally begin living from peace instead of performance. And that is where true self-love finally begins. At the end of the day, Buddhism teaches that true self-love is not selfishness. It is learning how to stop abandoning yourself emotionally. For so many years, many people spend their lives chasing approval, seeking validation, tolerating emotional pain, and sacrificing their peace just to feel accepted by others. They become disconnected from their own soul while trying to become enough for everyone else. But the more you ignore yourself, the heavier life becomes internally. Real healing begins the moment you finally turn inward, the moment you stop speaking to yourself with hatred, the moment you stop chasing people who cannot value you, the moment you stop sacrificing your peace to keep everyone else comfortable, the moment you stop waiting for external love to fix the emptiness inside you. Buddhism teaches that peace was never meant to come from the outside world alone. True peace begins within your own mind. It grows when you learn how to respect yourself, protect your energy, forgive your past, enjoy your own company, and stop depending on the world to constantly confirm your worth. The truth is that many people spend their whole life trying to be loved by others while never truly learning how to love themselves. But no amount of attention, success, relationships, or validation can permanently heal a mind that constantly rejects itself internally. This is why self-awareness is so important. The more connected you become with yourself, the less emotionally controlled you become by fear, rejection, loneliness, and outside opinions. You stop living from desperation. You stop living from emotional survival. You stop living for approval. Instead, you begin living with awareness, balance, and inner peace. And slowly, your entire life changes. Your mind becomes calmer. Your emotions become lighter. Your relationships become healthier. Your nervous system finally begins relaxing. For the first time in a long time, you stop feeling emotionally lost because you are no longer abandoning yourself every single day. Buddhism teaches that suffering decreases when attachment decreases. The less attached you become to validation, toxic relationships, comparison and external approval, the freer your soul becomes. You begin realizing that peace is more valuable than attention. Self-respect is more valuable than people-pleasing. Inner calm is more valuable than constantly trying to impress the world. The beautiful thing about self-love is that it changes everything quietly. You begin making healthier decisions. You begin protecting your peace naturally. You begin saying no to things that destroy your soul. You stop chasing people who cannot appreciate you properly. You stop forcing yourself to stay where your spirit suffers. And most importantly, you finally begin treating yourself like someone worthy of love, kindness, peace, and compassion too. Because you were never meant to spend your whole life fighting yourself internally. You were never meant to live in constant emotional exhaustion. You were never meant to abandon your own soul just to feel accepted by the world. The moment you finally choose yourself with awareness and compassion, your healing truly begins. And maybe that is the most powerful Buddhist lesson of all. The peace you have been searching for externally was always waiting to grow within you.